Real Madrid faces Bayern Munich in the Champions League for the 27th time on Tuesday, April 30th at the Allianz Arena in Munich. The clash between these two giants is the most played match in Europe dating back to 1976. In this video, I'll provide a breakdown of how Real Madrid can dismantle Bayern Munich and destroy them in their clash. After studying Bayern Munich and Tomas Tuchel, I have a good idea of how Real Madrid can set up their team to smash the German rivals. Real Madrid is coming off a victory against Manchester City in where the bookies gave the Spanish Giants only a 17% chance of advancing to the next round. No team was able to defeat City in the Champions League in 30 matches at the Etihad. Manchester City's win over Real Madrid seemed inevitable, but what Carlo Ancelotti is known for as a manager is using different systems with his team to get results. Which brings me to my first point, which is be compact. Tomas Tuchel is known historically for playing 3 in the back with 5 midfielders and his wingers playing very wide in an effort to stretch teams and find runners centrally. Tuchel is the manager that came closest to winning the Champions League with PSG, but ultimately ended up losing to his current squad Bayern Munich. One of the strategies that Tuchel likes utilizing is late runs from deeper positions. This is how Tuchel successfully scored their only goal against City in the Champions League final, and it's how they were able to get a draw at the Emirates. Bayern's wide players are their most dangerous outfielders. And unlike other teams that utilize more typical number 9s, Harry Kane likes to drop into deeper positions to find runners. Which brings me to my next point, which is disrupt Harry Kane. One of the tactics Tuchel will look to use is drag players out of position and utilize runners, such as Gnabry and Sané. So Carlo's strategy of using his center backs to mark the number 9 and get aggressive like they did against Erling Haaland will need to change in this game. Because it can't be that effective because Harry Kane really likes to drop into deeper positions to find teammates, whereas Erling Haaland really has the emphasis and focus on being in the box to receive crosses and balls into him. But it will be really critical for Real Madrid to not allow Harry Kane the time and space to find people because he's really a top-class player. He's not only a 9, he's also a 10. He can find teammates all across the pitch. That's why we'll need to stay compact and share in the responsibility defensively. This is a much different opponent to City, and I really think they suit Real Madrid. The threat posed by Bayern Munich is not as great of a threat that comes from Real Madrid, which brings me to my next point, which is one of the biggest in this video, which is Bayern Munich's defense is shit. There's not a single defender that starts for Bayern Munich that would start in Real Madrid's starting lineup. Their fullbacks and center backs have been getting P. Diddy'd all season. Bad boy. Bayern Munich has let in 37 goals this season. That's almost double that of the current champions of Germany, Bayer Leverkusen. Part of the reason for this is their fullbacks are very poor defensively, and both of their center backs, De Ligt and Eric Dyer, they're just not good one-on-one defenders. Both of their center backs are good at reading the game, but both of them are not good at defending players one-on-one. So if they're faced with 2 tricky Brazilian forwards that are fast and able to dribble, they will get roasted in my opinion. I really believe this is a nightmare scenario for Bayern Munich's defense, facing Rodrigo, Vinny, and Jude Bellingham when you have such poor one-on-one defenders. Where Bayern Munich's center backs shine is when they're playing against more conventional teams that have 9s where they can get physical against the 9 and win duels in the air, but what they really struggle with is when they have forwards that are running at them and isolating them. And Real Madrid has 3 out of the 5 best dribblers in world football, and that's going to be too much for their defense to deal with, which brings me to my fourth point, which is press them. This is not a team that can play through a press like Manchester City. We saw how effective our pressing was against City, and I hope Carlo takes a page out of Arsenal's book because they didn't sit back. Arsenal pressed Bayern, and they created so many chances, especially in the first leg. And their center backs are so poor at passing the ball out of the back. And their overall build-up play is pretty terrible. If you've watched any of Bayern Munich this season and you've seen their build-up play, they're not able to play through presses. Bayern's biggest threat is their individual players like Gnabry, Sané, Musiala, Harry Kane that can create something out of nothing. But in order for that to happen, they need to find a way to move and progress the ball up the pitch. I don't think we should allow them the space and time to be able to find those players. And given how poor their build-up play is, I think we can go very aggressively with our press and try to win the ball back very high up the pitch. Arsenal created so many chances, especially at the Emirates, but they weren't able to convert those chances. And I just think that if those chances fall to either Jude, Rodrigo, or Vinny, we can get a comfortable lead and defeat them in that manner. Now, they do have world-class forwards, and they have scored 87 goals as opposed to Bayer Leverkusen, that's the reigning champions of Germany, only scored 75 goals. So they do present a threat with their forward players. But football is about much more than individual talent. Arsenal let in 2 very bad goals that was against the run of play at the Emirates. And if it wasn't for those 2 fluky moments where Arsenal lost concentration and gave up those 2 goals, they should have won comfortably against this Bayern team. Which brings me to my final point, which is isolate their fullbacks. Bayern's fullbacks are just poor defensively. And I know we're linked with Alphonso Davies, but that's just the reality of it. We're not going up against Ferland Mendy and Danny Carvajal that are solid world-class fullbacks. I know some will say Kimmich is a top-class defender, but he's more of a 6, and he can be got at. And there's so much video evidence of him getting roasted in the Bundesliga. Now imagine Kimmich having to go against Vinicius Jr. for 2 legs. I'm sorry, but that's gonna be too much for him. We have difference makers that are a nightmare for these fullbacks. And I just don't see how Kimmich slows down Vinny. And I think Carlo in possession should try to make the team play with as much width as possible to really isolate their fullbacks and run at them. We really have to take advantage of how poor their fullbacks are. But the big question is, will Carlo Ancelotti start Lucas Vazquez or Nacho at right back in this game? Because Carvajal is suspended for the first leg, and Lucas Vazquez has really been in great form. But I'm not sure I feel the most comfortable with Lucas Vazquez defending against either Coleman or Gnabry. I'm not sure which one of those 2 will play over on Lucas Vazquez's side, but it's very clear that whoever plays in the pivot with Kroos will need to help Vazquez out a lot defensively. He cannot get isolated one-on-one. After scouting and watching this team, I'm more confident than ever. I just don't see us losing. But I must say that Tomas Tuchel is a top-class manager, and he's beaten us before when he was the manager of Chelsea, where they ultimately ended up winning the Champions League against Pep Guardiola's City. Obviously, we returned the favor by defeating them the next year, but they gave us hell. I mean, they came to the Bernabeu, and at some point they were leading until that Luka Modric world-class assist, and then the late goal by Karim Benzema in extra time. And before they ran out of steam, they were really giving us a hard time, and Thomas Tuchel was able to make a lot of adjustments in the game to find a way to have success. He's a very good cup manager. He seems to struggle in the league, but he does pretty well in cups. And like I mentioned early on in the video, he's the manager that went the furthest with PSG. And they could have easily won the Champions League had Mbappe converted his chance. So Thomas Tuchel is a top-class manager, but from everything I've seen so far from Bayern Munich, they've just looked so beatable. They've looked so beatable for Real Madrid. The team we just beat in Manchester City is just tenfold way better than Bayern Munich. So I just think across the board, we should be able to get the job done and make it to Wembley. Let me know if you guys agree. Let me know in the comment section. Thank you all for watching. Hala Madrid. And make sure to subscribe because there'll be another preview video after this one.